Hey friends, and welcome to the Cait Casts On channel. If you're new here, my name is Caitlin, and I'm a knitter, spinner, sewist, and sometimes quilter based out of the Pacific Northwest. I have a really exciting episode for you today talking about all the things I knit in 2025. So grab your craft of choice and settle in, and we'll get started. Hello and Happy New Year. I hope you had a really lovely holiday season and are having a good start to your year so far. I'm filming this on New Year's Eve, December 31st, and it has been a couple of hectic weeks here at home with the holidays and family visiting and things like that. But thankfully, I've managed to find some good knitting time and have finished most of the works in progress that I had on my needles. So I have quite a bit to share with you today. It's been really interesting preparing for this video and reflecting on the last year of knitting and of making. It was a pretty unique year for me, 2025 was. My husband and I moved. We relocated across the state, and that process started in January, and we really weren't like here and settled until April or May. So kind of a turbulent but good start to the year. But because of all of those changes, I really didn't spend much time knitting during that time period, which is quite odd for me. I actually didn't finish my first knitted object until the end of May, which is kind of bonkers to me. It's absolutely what I needed to do in that time period, and I'm not angry about it. On the flip side, in the latter half of the year, I actually had quite a bit of time for knitting, more than I truly ever have. But yeah, I'm hoping going to the new year that I can just be a little bit more consistent and steady and even with it all and just use it as a tool to help myself feel creative and energized and hopeful and excited, and just all the good things that come with knitting. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start getting into my finished objects. The first finished object that I have to share is a pair of socks, and these are the Kuutar Socks, which is a pattern by Sari Nordland. I knit these up using Madeline Tosh Twist Light in the color Aura, which is this really beautiful kind of icy slate blue color, with these really subtle tonal variations. When it's in stockinette in the foot, you can definitely see it comes out a bit stripy in sock form, but in the lace, I feel like it's much more subtle and interesting. I had a lot of fun knitting these socks. This lace pattern is really, really fun to work up. This was really the beginning of me thinking about how I can customize a sock pattern to make it better fit my foot. I have been knitting socks for a few years, and to be honest, none of them ever fit like just right. Like they were fine, but they were kind of loose in some areas, tight in other areas, and just kind of weren't the fit that made me feel like excited and gung-ho about making a lot more hand-knitted socks. But this year, one of my goals for 2025 was to kind of perfect my sock fit and find a sock fit that really works for me, that I'm excited about, that can be applied across different patterns, and just fits me really well. And so this was kind of the beginning of that journey for me. It's definitely not like 100% there. This is not the perfect sock fit for me, but it was a major step in the right direction, which I'm quite pleased about. I've discovered that I think I have a slightly flatter foot than most people, because I've discovered that knitting a shorter heel flap and gusset results in a sock that fits my foot better. So this was me starting to play around with that. I definitely ended up shortening my gusset in future socks even more than this, but this was a huge step in the right direction for me. I'm pretty sure that this is the sock where I started playing around with my stitch counts as well. I do really like a 64 stitch round sock on 2.25 millimeter needles. I really like 64 stitches for the ankle of my sock, but I actually have found that I like going down to 60 stitches in the foot of the sock. Just makes it feel a little bit more snug. There's less wiggling around, and makes it feel more secure on my foot. So I started playing around with that in this sock as well, I'm pretty sure. And yeah, this was just kind of the beginning of my perfect sock fit journey. And it was definitely a step in the right direction. I would love to knit up more Kuutar socks and patterns in general in 2026 and the years to come, because this was just a really lovely project to work on, and I really enjoy wearing these socks. The next finished object that I have is one that I completed in July, and it's also one that I do not have with me. It was actually a birthday gift for my mom, so I will include a picture of it that she kindly took of it for me over here. This was a pretty customized project, but it was based off of the starting point of it was Veronica Lindbergh's Sailor Swift top. I changed quite a bit about it from the pattern. First and foremost, the gauge is quite a bit different. I just decided when I was doing gauge swatches and playing with the yarn that I felt like it needed to be a little bit tighter and denser. So I actually went down to a 2.25 millimeter needle for the whole project, which was quite the endeavor. But I think it resulted in a fabric that is quite nice. The yarn I used was Sanascarn Tin Line in 4 different colors. There was light blue, sunny lime, rose, and rose lavender. And instead of the stripes that are described in the pattern for the Sailor Swift top, I did a nice little fade between all the 4 colors. So that was a bit of a change as well. Because I went down in needle size, I actually used just the smallest needle that I already had. I also made a few other modifications to help the fit of the garment. For example, the underarm, I rose where that was quite a bit because I was also going to be using the same needle size, the 2.25 millimeter, for the I-cord edges around the armholes and the neck. And so I rose the armholes up a bit, actually quite a bit. The armholes got raised, I want to say like 3 inches maybe from where they were described to be in pattern. And then the neckline also got raised, and I just did it a little bit earlier, but that one wasn't quite so drastic. I want to say maybe that was an inch or maybe 2 before it was supposed to be in pattern. So those were slight modifications that I made just because I didn't want to go out and buy another smaller needles that I knew I probably wasn't going to use other than in this project. So those were a little bit of a modification I made. I also added a little bit of A-line shaping to the body of the garment, nothing like super drastic, just to give it a little bit of shape, and then did a split hem at the very bottom in the ribbing section. The front and back has a little bit of a split so that they're not connected. They were knit flat back and forth. So just some little details here and there. I definitely followed the process for the Sailor Swift, but played around obviously a lot with gauge and color and just little construction changes here and there. This was a really fun project to work on. I actually really enjoy playing around with numbers and the math and kind of changing up gauge and trying to hit certain targets. That's actually quite fun for me. And it was just nice to make something for my mom and to know that she has something in her closet that is very custom to her. The next finished object that I have is one that I completed in August, and that is this Monica Geller tee, which is a pattern by Sari Nordland. Excuse any fold lines. This has been put away for most of the winter. But I knit this up using Knitting for Olive Cotton Merino in the color navy. And this is just a really lovely pattern. This is actually my second Monica Geller tee that I've made. And it's just a really nice, classic, well-fitting tee. And it just feels very structured and polished and easy to dress up and down at the same time. So I really love this pattern. I did make a few modifications to this. Like I said, this is my second one. So I kind of came into this project knowing what modifications I wanted to make. First up, the pattern describes some waist shaping, specifically some hourglass waist shaping. So it has you start at the bottom, you cast on down here, and then you do some decreases to kind of bring the waist in, and then you increase back out. So you actually end up, after all the waist shaping, with the same stitch counts that you had at the cast on edge. So omitting those, which I decided to do, doesn't affect the numbers at all. You actually still get to follow pattern exactly. But yeah, I just decided I wanted a little bit more of a straight fitting body. And I really like the look of that. I also made one slight modification to how the seam between the arm and the body look. When you split and start knitting the front and back panels, there's a slip stitch that happens at the end of these rows that gives kind of a more like open look when you pick up stitches for your sleeve. It kind of has a bigger hole going all the way up. Which is definitely like a specific design choice. But I decided in this one that I didn't want that look. So I just knit my front and back panels like normal and did a normal pickup. And it looks, you know, pretty clean and just like any other knit garment sweater would look. And that I just decided is the look I wanted to go for in this one. There's also some really nice short row shaping happening in the sleeves just to give it a nice tailored look. And then there is just some nice half twisted rib details that I'm pretty sure that's what's in pattern. I don't think I changed that. I ended up just doing a standard bind off on this project just because the yarn is so dark and I don't think cast off edge is super visible anyway. So I just ended up saving myself some time and doing a standard bind off, which is definitely not the normal thing I do, but I don't mind it in this project at all. It's just a really nice classic fitting tee. I really love this pattern and it definitely gets quite a bit of wear, specifically in like spring, summer, and early fall when it's a bit warmer. This is a really nice garment to wear that feels comfortable but put together at the same time. August is where I really started getting my creative energy back. So I actually have a few more finished objects from August. The next one is this actual Sailor Swift top, which, like I said earlier, is a pattern by Veronica Lindberg or Kuutar Socks. It's just this really nice classic striped tank. I did also knit this one up on those smaller needles at that smaller gauge, the 2.25 millimeter needles. And again, it was just because I felt like the yarn needed a little bit of a denser gauge. I actually used the same yarn just in different colors that I did for my mom's tank. This is Sandnesgarn Tin Line in white. I don't know the exact color name. It's white, like a stark pure white. And then the stripes are a really nice little navy color, which I think it's a quite beautiful classic color combo. But yeah, I knit this up at a little bit of a denser gauge, so had to do some math there. But otherwise, this pretty much follows pattern exactly. The only modifications I made were because of the gauge. I raised where the armholes would have ended and then also where the neck would have started, just because I didn't want to go out and buy a smaller needle to do the I-cord with. So it couldn't be raised quite so much. But I think it turned out well. My one, I don't know. The one thing I'm not super happy with this top is how wide the neck is. I did think about cutting it open and redoing it earlier this fall and just decided to sit with it for a little while longer because I'm not sure the best way to go about it. I remember that I picked up one for every one stitch on the cast on edges on the back and the front. And then on the sides, I definitely documented it, but I don't recall the exact number. Maybe it was 2 out of 3 stitches that I picked up on the side. It was a low enough number that I'm not sure that if I cut this open and did it again, I'm not sure how much more of a difference I could make. Like, I don't think I could really bring it in all that much. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I will attempt that this spring, making that alteration, or maybe I will figure out a way to enjoy this top without doing that. But it doesn't look bad. It's just a little bit more open than my personal preference is. But yeah, it's still a really comfortable top. This fabric, even knit at a denser gauge, is still quite drapey and breathable and nice, and it feels really good to wear during the summer months. So that's the one slight tweak I might make to it in the upcoming year, but it's okay. It definitely got wear as it is, and we'll just see. But yeah, that was my next finished object that I had in August. The next project that I finished in August was a pair of socks. I believe it was my third pair of Oxbow Socks, which is a pattern by Drea Renee Knits, or Andrea Mowry. And I knit these up using Fuzzy Peach Fibers Soft Sock in the color Death Cap, which was from their mushroom collection that they did a few years ago. And unfortunately, as much as I loved these socks, I probably loved them a little bit too much. And they accidentally got put through the dryer. So they have felted up and are quite a bit smaller than they are supposed to be, which is a huge bummer. I was quite devastated when these got pulled out of the laundry. They are superwash. I might be able to do something to kind of try and stretch them out a bit. I don't know. We'll see. I obviously still have them. I haven't just like tried to tear them apart or recycled the yarn at all. So we'll see. Maybe I'll be able to do something with them. But I was honestly just so sad to lose these guys to the dryer. It was my own fault. And we have since implemented a better system for my hand knit socks and how we wash them. But yeah, it is what it is. It happens. I actually have, I want to say like maybe 40 or just under 50% of this skein of yarn left. So I could do another pair of socks in these, and maybe just do like a contrasting heel or toe or cuff or something like that, and technically get a very similar pair of socks. But yeah, this was an unfortunate accident this year. It happens. Again, it was my own fault, but it is what it is. The yarn is quite beautiful. It's this really lovely green, yellow, gray, speckly thing. Like I said, this is my third pair of Oxbow socks, and I absolutely love this pattern. It's one of my favorite sock patterns, if not my favorites. It creates a sock that is just really well fitting. It has, like, even though this is felted, you can see how much stretch and give there is. Because of the knit purl texture, it forms to your foot really well, but it's also, it creates a nicer looking sock than just like a straight rib does, because it doesn't suck in entirely. Like, it still looks like a sock, which, you know, it's always kind of funny trying to like photograph or show fully ribbed socks. They really just like shrink in on themselves. Versus, you know, this one, even though it's felted, it still looks quite a bit like a sock. So yeah, definitely not my last pair of Oxbow socks. I will be making more. I love them dearly, and highly recommend that sock pattern if you haven't tried it. These have been in kind of the back of my yarn shelf. Maybe I'll try and do something with them. I don't know. They're not like felted beyond repair. There's still some stitch definition there. They've just shrunk a lot. So I don't know. If any of you have advice or tips or experience with something like this, definitely let me know, because I feel like this yarn is still usable, probably, but this pair of socks is not. The last thing I finished in August was a very busy month, was this really lovely Cove Sweater. This is a pattern by the Knit Purl Girl, and I knit this up using 2 strands of Knitting for Olive Merino held together. I used the colors Blue Jeans and Blue Tit, and it results in this really like nice, subtle marled fabric. Just really, really lovely. This is one of my most worn sweaters from the year, if not my most worn sweater that I knit this year. I really, really love it. It's got this really classic sweatshirt-like feel. The gauge is like a good balance between being open and structured. Like, it's at a decently loose gauge, but it still has a good amount of structure to it. I really love the details in the Cove Sweater. The shoulder increases are just lovely. The 2x2 rib details are great. The pattern also describes how to do some arm decreases. And sorry, this literally just came off the blocking mats, so it's a little bit wrinkled in some places. But instead of doing all of your decreases under the arm like a normal sweater, the pattern also describes a way to do some decorative decreases on the top. I ended up moving those to the underarm just because I decided for this specific sweater I didn't want that look. But it's a very cool detail that the pattern has. And the pattern also describes a way to do some short row shaping before the hem to kind of give it a high-low look, like be higher in the front and lower in the back. I also decided to omit that just because I was already getting a little bit of that kind of shaping just wearing the sweater as is, and I decided I didn't want to exaggerate it. But a cool detail all the same. Like I said, this sweater gets a lot of wear. I'm actually currently knitting my second Cove sweater. It's one of the projects that I have on my needles that I didn't finish before today. But that's how much I love this sweater pattern. It's just really, really lovely. I think on my Cove sweater that I'm currently working on, I am going to do the collar a little bit differently. This has just really opened up with wear, and I'm sure a lot of that is my yarn choice. Knitting for olive, in my experience, has a tendency to grow quite a bit with blocking. And so I think just the way this collar is structured, it has just grown a little bit. It's also, like I said, kind of an open gauge for me. And so I'm sure that's contributing to it as well. But for my next one, I'm going to knit my collar in more. I mean, maybe as much as an inch from all sides more. I think that that might create a sweater fit that I like a little bit better and give it a little bit more room for it to grow out in the future. And then I'm also debating, I'm pretty sure, I don't know if this is in pattern or not, but there is like in the double folded neckband, there is a purl row to help it give it like a nice crease line for it to fold on. And I might omit that in my next one, just to maybe help it lay not so flat. I don't know. I just think this yarn has kind of stretched and grown and is a little bit flat looking to me now. So that might be a modification that I make on my next one. And I'm also thinking I will probably redo the collar on this sweater in the next few months as well. But nothing that can't be modified with a little bit of time. So I think that's going to be something I change on my next one, and I will probably modify on this one as well. But this is just a really lovely classic sweater staple to have in your closet. I absolutely love wearing it. It's really easy to style. It feels like it has just enough personality to be like really cute with a lot of different outfits, but it's like still easy to pair with a bunch of different stuff. And yeah, I'm obviously making my second one already, so highly recommend this pattern if you haven't tried it already. The next thing I finished this year was in September, and it was another pair of socks. I decided I wanted to make a pair of DK rib socks. I just kind of freehanded this design. I've made my husband an identical pair of socks just to his size before, and he really loves his, and so I thought it was time for me to make a pair for me as well. I knit these up using Coast to Coast Yarn Co.'s classic sock in the color Frosty Flakes, and then I just held the yarn double, and so you get this really nice kind of watercolory look. And I just did a 2x2 rib sock. I started with an Italian cast on and then kind of rearranged the stitches to make a 2x2 rib design. I carried it all the way down through the heel flap. And you can see actually in this one better, I started shortening my heel flap and gusset quite a bit to better fit my foot. And then just continued the 2x2 rib on top and then did stockinette on the bottom. And yeah, these are rib socks, so they kind of look funny when they're not on a foot, but they stretch out really nicely and just have a really nice detail when they're being worn. They're very cozy, very squishy, and really, really nice to wear. I knit these up on US 3 or 3.25 millimeter needles just for reference. So the gauge is still pretty tight and good for socks. There's not a lot of wear that happens. They're just like a nice, squishy, warm, comfortable pair. And then in October, the first thing I finished was a Jaunty shawl, which is a pattern by Andrea Mowry or Drea Renee Knits. She came out with this pattern either like the very tail end of September or the very beginning of October. And I think I cast this on within like a day or two of her releasing the pattern. It was such a fun thing to work on. She designed this pattern, if you're not familiar, to work for like any weight yarn that you have. And honestly, pretty much any amount of yarn that you have. I think the bare minimum she recommends is 1 skein. But she has versions knit with 3 skeins of yarn, 1 skein of yarn, 2 skeins of yarn, all different weights. So there's just like a lot of flexibility in this pattern. It is a half fisherman's rib scarf pattern or shawl pattern, depending on how big you make it. Honestly, it has very similar vibes to a Sophie scarf or Sophie shawl, but I have knit one of those before, but I actually really preferred this pattern and this process. At least for me, it's a lot easier to read your stitches and your rows. So I didn't need to be keeping like an active count of what row I was on. I figured out how to read the rows. And I feel like it's pretty simple once you get the hang of it, so that I could really do this on the go and not worry about, you know, not wanting to be distracted or anything like that. It was just a really easy pick up and go project. I knit this up using some yarn that I hand spun. It was actually, I think, my second hand spun project. So it's not the most consistent yarn, but this is the perfect project for it. You cannot tell that it's not a super consistent yarn. It just looks really nice and even and feels really nice and even all the way across. So a really great project for these kinds of yarns. This is from fiber that I got from Mosaic Moon, which I believe is no longer in business anymore, unfortunately, but it's using their color. I believe it's called Sirius, and it's just navy, green, red. And I did a short forward, so worsted spun yarn, and I did a 3-ply, and there wasn't a ton of planning in it. I just kind of had fun, and it resulted in a really cute little stripy shawl. And yeah, I was honestly just really glad to have a project that used this yarn, because I really didn't have anything in mind, and just kind of figured the skein would sit in my stash for a really long time because it's hand spun. I can't really get rid of it. It's special to me, especially being one of my earliest hand spuns. It's special to me. So to have it like worked up is really, really nice. And yeah, it's just a cute little project. This is like technically enough length, but I think that this was like the shortest I would want a jaunty shawl to be. It can wrap around my shoulders, but like barely. When I take my hair out, that helps. But like, it's not enough length for me to like tie it. It just kind of has to like tuck under and sit. And so it can't really hang too loosely because these will fall off the back of my shoulders. But yeah, it technically works. This is basically the shortest I would want a jaunty shawl to be. And I'm interested in knitting more with like 3 or 2 skeins of yarn. And I think that that would result in something really nice. But yeah, a fun little project. I'm really pleased with it, and I'm really glad to have used the yarn for something special. Then in October, I also finished what is my Mount Everest. This is my Vita cardigan, which is a pattern by Susan Crawford. This took so much work, and it's also one of the reasons why I did not have a finished object until the end of May. I cast this on in January. So throughout our move, throughout a lot of the life changes that were going on, this was on my needles. And honestly, there came a point where I really did not have the mental space to work on this as much as I wanted to. So it did end up getting put away for most of the summer. I think I picked it up again in September. But it was just a true labor of love, and I am so proud of this sweater. I knit this up using 7 different colors of Knitting for Olive Merino. The main color that I used, like on the collar here, for example, is Blue Whale. And then throughout the rest of the sweater, I have, I have Navy, Dusty Dove Blue, Oatmeal, Plum Rose, Claret, and then Dark Moose, I believe, is this other one. So yeah, lots of really fun colors in this one. And then I also grabbed some nice wooden buttons from my local yarn store to finish it off. And I think they suit it really, really nicely. This is a really, really fun but challenging pattern, or at least it was for me. It's knit from the bottom up and it has steeks. And so you knit most of the time with this all kind of closed up in the center and you're knitting in the round. And then I started by opening up the sleeve steeks and knitting the sleeves, and the cardigan steek, the center steek, was pretty much the last thing I did for the most part, before doing the button band and things like that. It was a really, really fun project, and I'm so glad I did it. I definitely went into it knowing that it was going to be a challenge, knowing that it was going to take quite a bit of time, and I just felt like I was ready to tackle it, and I was really, really excited to try something like this. Like I said, I cast it on in January, so it was like really one of my big goals for the year was I wanted to tackle more challenging projects like this. And in some ways, it is as difficult as I anticipated, and in other ways, it's more difficult than I anticipated. And then there's also things that, like steeking, for example, cutting open my steeks was so much easier than I thought it was going to be. It was like a little bit nerve-wracking for sure. This is the first time I steeked. So it was a little bit nerve-wracking, but I just made sure to watch some video tutorials, make sure I'm cutting in the right place and things like that. And it really was quite fun to try and to do and to just have as a tool in my back pocket. It was really nice to be able to knit in the round throughout the whole thing. I guess, where did I not knit in the round? The button band was the only place I did not knit in the round. So yeah, it was really, really nice. And just a really cool thing to learn how to do. I also cast on this sweater not knowing how much wear I was actually going to get out of it. I thought it was beautiful, but it's quite a bit different from anything else in my closet. And so I was just coming into it from a process knit perspective, and I was kind of like, I just want to knit this, and if I wear it, great, and if it just sits as a really beautiful portfolio piece for me, that's also fine. And I am so pleasantly, not surprised, but kind of surprised to say this is one of my most worn sweaters. I love this thing so much. It gets so much wear because it is fingering weight yarn. Obviously, it's stranded color work, so there's floats that basically make it twice as thick. It's just like a really comfortable, flowy sweater that's really nice to wear inside during the winter even. It's like a light enough layer that it provides some coverage, but it's not like stiflingly warm. Now that it's pretty cold outside, I don't think this could be the only thing I wear outside, but in the fall, I wore it outside just as a nice little light layer all the time. So yeah, it's actually gotten quite a bit of wear, and I really, really love this. It's inspired, I think, an even greater love of color work for me, and especially Fair Isle style color work. This was just a lot of fun to make, even in the moments where it was challenging and I kind of had to be in a specific mental space to work on it. Like, it always provided a sense of like inspiration and joy and like accomplishment every time I worked on it. So it was just a really, really lovely project. And I'm going into 2026 wanting to knit more of stranded colorwork projects and Fair Isle style projects like this, just to add to my closet, especially now that I know I love wearing things like this. So yeah, this was my Mount Everest. It's the reason why, or the biggest reason why, I didn't have a finished object until May, and it was so, so worth it. I'm so proud of this. I could talk about this forever, but yeah, if you have been kind of wanting to try and challenge yourself and knit something that might feel a little bit out of reach, or like, you know, it's going to take longer than your typical projects, but you want to be challenged like that, I would highly recommend starting and just doing it. And if it takes 9 months like it did for me, then that's fine. But the result has been, in my case, very rewarding and empowering and just really, really cool. So I think of all the things I knit this year, as many of them as I love, this one takes the cake. The next finished object that I have is also one that has been gifted to my mother, so I don't have it. However, I did know to take pictures of it before I sent it off this time, so I'll include pictures. This is My second Jaunty shawl, which like I said earlier, is a pattern by Drea Renee Knits. It's that half fisherman's rib shawl, like this one. But this one is obviously using a very different style and color of yarn. I knitted up using some hand spun that I created. Maybe it was the yarn that I created just after that one that I just showed in the other Jaunty shawl. And it was originally intended to be a different project for my mom that just kind of didn't pan out. I think I got in a little bit over my head, and I was a little too much for me as such a beginner spinner at that point in time. So I'm really pleased to have been able to make a Jaunty shawl out of it. The fiber mostly came from a Lucky Dip pack that I got from Hedgehog Fibers. So kind of like a mystery leftover bundle of fiber. And then there were a few other bits and bobs thrown in, some from Wee Woolies, which is a company pretty local to me. I think there might have also been some fiber from Hearts on Fiber, which is a local yarn shop in North Carolina, in Davidson, I believe. And then there might have been a little bit of like generic Rosie's wool top from the Woolery in there. It was kind of a combination of a lot of different things. It was a very fun and playful thing to spin up, and a very unique skein of yarn. And the goal was kind of to create a fade. So yeah, that's kind of where the idea was. And it didn't pan out in the project that I originally intended it for, but it worked fantastic in the Jaunty shawl. That version of the Jaunty shawl is a little bit bigger than this one, my first one. It has about 60 grams more of yarn, so there was just more material to work with. And I want to say it's probably 2 to 3 inches deeper at the center point here, and probably 10 to 12 inches longer in wingspan. So quite a bit bigger. It comfortably wraps around your neck, and the tails can sit here. You can probably even tie them a little bit if you wanted to. But yeah, it's a really fun version of the Jaunty shawl that's very bright and colorful and reminds me a lot of my mom. So I'm glad that it has found a home with her. And yeah, it was a really, really fun project. I see many more Jaunty shawls in my future, and I don't know how many Jaunty shawls I personally need, so I'm sure some of them will be being gifted in the future too. I also finished an Oslo hat in November. This was a reknit project. I had attempted it the year before using this yarn, and just knit it at too dense of a gauge, and so I frogged that, and it got reknit again. Unfortunately, in between me knitting it up the first time and frogging it, it also got put through the dryer, because yeah, that happens more frequently than I would care to admit, probably, between my shrunk socks and this. So I think the yarn did shrink up quite a bit, and unfortunately I didn't have as much yardage as I was hoping for, and the hat is a little bit more shallow than I would like. It's wearable, it fits me. It's a little bit more shallow than I wanted. I wanted a little bit more height here, but it covers the tips of my ears. So I don't know. We'll see if I really wear this hat much this winter. I'll probably keep it around this winter and maybe even next winter before I make any decisions about it. But I could also see me frogging this again and using the yarn for something else. I guess I should say the yarn is Coast to Coast Yarn Co.'s Natural Extra Fine in the color Crater Lake. It's an absolutely beautiful color. I really, really love it. And I held the yarn double to knit the Oslo hat. And yeah, it's a really lovely yarn. So if I don't get much wear out of it in this hat, I probably will frog it and use it for something else because this color is so pretty. I really, really love this yarn, and the feel of it too is just great. So yeah, we'll see. It's definitely not my proudest accomplishment of this year, but I'm glad I tried. I'm glad I took the time to frog the other one that obviously wasn't working, and I got one that semi-works. So we'll see what happens with it. But in the meantime, it's just nice to have an option to wear an Oslo hat. Also in November, I finished this really lovely Louvre Sweater, which is a pattern by Petite Knit. I knit this up using Coast to Coast Yarn Co.'s Shanico tweed fingering in the color Button. So it's just a really nice cream grayish tweed that I think is really, really lovely. I also held this yarn double in order to meet gauge for the Louvre sweater. And it resulted in a fabric that I am in love with. This is my first time knitting with Shanico, and it is just such a lovely fiber. If you're not familiar, a Shanico sheep is a hybrid between a merino sheep and a rambouillet. And so it's really, really soft yarn that also has a little bit more bounce and structure to it than a traditional merino does. And yeah, it's just really lovely. I have knit a lot of things using merino wool. I have decently sensitive skin, I think. And so merino is typically the thing I pull for. And I use superwash merino, honestly, more than I think I would like. I like the properties of non-superwash more, but it can be a little bit itchy on my skin. This is a non-superwash treated wool, and I was a little bit nervous that it might feel a little bit sensitive on my skin, especially because this sweater has a little bit of a high neck. But I would argue that this is probably the most comfortable sweater that I own. I'm thrilled with it. It's more comfortable than my merinos that I have. So if you have not had a chance to try Shanico wool, I highly recommend. I am so pleased with this fabric. It's so bouncy. It has some structure to it still, but it's so soft. This sweater has gotten quite a bit of wear since I finished it. I want to say I finished it at the end of November, and I think I probably wore it at least half a dozen times, if not more, in December. And the underarm, I have not deep hilled or done anything at all. And you can see, even in the highest traffic areas, there is really not much to show for it. It could probably use a little bit of deep hilling, but also because it's a tweed yarn, it's kind of hard to tell. But it's not bad at all. It's totally within the realm of what I consider to be acceptable wear and tear of a garment. So just genuinely so pleased with this. I actually have another sweater quantity of Shanico yarn waiting for me for a cast on in a few weeks, and I'm so excited to work with it again. It was just so much fun. It felt great to knit with. It feels great to wear. Just absolutely in love. Also, this pattern, the Louvre Sweater by Petite Knit, is just a lovely, lovely sweater pattern. This is my second one that I have made. And it just fits super well, feels very polished and elegant, while also feeling very like classic and honestly basic. And I mean that in like the best way possible. It's simple and it's elegant in its simplicity. So just a really, really nice sweater that can be dressed up or down really easily and really easy to style as well. I absolutely love it. Highly, highly recommend the Louvre Sweater if you have not tried knitting that one out or haven't looked at it before. Just love it. So yeah, I know I said that my Vita cardigan right here is like my proudest accomplishment of 2025. This one for me was probably the most enjoyable thing that I made. Both in the process and the product. Like it was a really easy, nice, light, just thing to work on. Like I really enjoyed coming back to it during my day and working a few rows on it. It was just a very easy, seamless process. The product is really, really nice to wear. I love wearing it. You know, it's just a great sweater. So they are very different sweaters, both in the product and the process, but they are my favorites of the year, each for their own unique little reasons. The next thing that I finished in November was another sweater, one that I also cannot show you in person, but I have pictures of. And it's also one that I did kind of in secret and had a lot of other things going on at the same time as well. It's one that I never shared on my podcast, and that is because it was a gift for my grandmother for Christmas, and I know she watches the podcast, so I didn't want to spoil the surprise for her. But that is a Marseille Cardigan, which is a pattern by Coco Amore Knitwear. I knitted up using Cascade 220 Superwash. The white is just like the off-white color, and then paired with this really lovely soft brown color, and that was actually their 220 Superwash Merino or 220 Merino Superwash, I forget. And that is in the color Walnut Heather. So really lovely, soft, cozy yarn that hopefully, you know, is a practical choice for my grandmother as well. But this was a really fun pattern to knit up. It was my first time doing a contiguous construction or continuous construction. Is that what you call it? It kind of starts like a drop shoulder, and then you kind of cast on stitches, and it essentially becomes the process of a raglan, but it looks like a drop shoulder or a set-in sleeve kind of construction. So very interesting and cool, a new technique to learn. I actually bought the pattern without realizing that that was the construction style. So when I started knitting and realized that's what it was, I got very excited because I've been wanting to try that construction style for a while. But yeah, it was a really fun knit to work on. I love doing stripes. It feels very motivating to see how much progress you're making, and, you know, only a few more rows till I get to change colors again. So it was a really fun project for that. It was also my first time doing a crew neck cardigan. I've only done V-neck cardigans up to this point, and so that was quite interesting to figure out, you know, how to do the ribbing and all the different areas and stuff like that. That was a new kind of sweater design for me. And yeah, I would love to tackle another crew neck cardigan in the new year. There's actually one sweater pattern that I have in mind for myself that I would like to tackle with a crew neck cardigans construction. It was just very cool. And a new style that I would personally like to add to my closet. I finished off the sweater with some nice resin buttons that have kind of a tortoise shell coloring to them that I thought suited it well. And I had plenty of those buttons in that size in my button stash, and so it worked out perfectly. I pretty much knit this pattern like with no modifications for the most part. I think the only thing that I did is I adjusted some of the armhole sizing because I was just taking measurements of myself and kind of comparing to the measurements that my aunt sent me for my grandma. And I thought that maybe I wanted to create a slightly deeper armhole because the patterns one was quite tight. And so I ended up doing that to hopefully give her a little bit more room in the underarm. That's one of my pet peeves, is like, I like having quite a bit of room in the underarm. So I made that little modification there, but otherwise it was pretty straightforward into pattern. And it was a really fun thing to work on. And I'm so glad that she has it now and that she loves it, and that it's just a nice little hug for me every time she wears it. And now we are finally up to December. This last month has been quite a busy month in terms of knitting and trying to get things complete for the holidays for myself and for gifts. The first thing I finished was this custom colorwork sweater that I completed kind of based off of the Azor pattern, which is by Orlane Souche or Tete Beche Knitwear. But I customized the color work to be a little bit different. I already have an Azor in my closet that I love and just felt like I didn't need two of them. So I kind of designed my own color work here in the yoke, very inspired actually by Susan Crawford's Dalloway sweater, which is a pattern that I own in a book that I have from her. And I really love the look of it, but the gauge just didn't work out. And so I kind of pulled similar motifs and drew up my own chart to work for this gauge and this fit, because the Azor specifically is a pattern that fits me really, really well. And I love it so much. And so I was really looking forward to having a sweater that I knew fit me really well, but also felt a little bit unique with the color work too. I did make some modifications to this sweater throughout the process. I actually filmed an entire vlog about knitting this sweater. So if you're curious to hear more of that, or just like how I went about it, that video is up on my channel if you're curious. But anyway, I guess I should mention before I get much further, I knit this up using Cascade Heritage in the color Limestone for my main color, and then Treehouse Knits Sequoia Fingering in the color Edges of Your Soul for the color work motif. And I think they look really, really beautiful together. But yeah, I made a few modifications to the Azor pattern other than the color work. I changed the collar to be a double folded collar and did a half twisted rib. I also did the half twisted rib on all the hems. I added some color work to the sleeves that is not in pattern. And actually for this little motif, I was able to pull directly from Susan Crawford's Dalloway sweater pattern. So that was really, really nice. And yeah, did some custom sleeve tapering, nothing too major, just slightly changed for my preference. But yeah, definitely followed the core of the Azor pattern and just made those few tweaks for fit and design here and there. And I'm really, really pleased with this sweater. I think it's unique enough in its coloring that I think it can be worn pretty much all winter, all fall, whatever, as long as the temperature allows me to wear it. But it also has something about it that feels very festive and Christmassy. So I'm really pleased with it. I think it hits a nice balance between the two that makes it flexible enough to wear all season long, but like I could wear this to a holiday party and it looks like a holiday sweater. So yeah, very, very pleased with this sweater. And excited to get more wear out of it in 2026. I also decided that I wanted to be a little bit spontaneous this December and just have some fun. So I ended up working on a pair of sailor slippers for myself. This is a pattern by Annie Sews, and I knit these up using the recommended yarn, which is Drops Snow. I have this really cute little off-white color and like a sky blue, and then this kind of gray brown sole. I love the color combination. I think these are really, really cute. But this is just like a really fun little quick pattern to knit up. You actually use very chunky yarn and very big needles, and you knit this giant slipper that's like 3 times the size of your foot. And then you stick it in the washing machine with some towels for agitation, and it felts and it shrinks down and results in a really nice, cozy, warm slipper. So just a really, really fun little quick project. I think I was a little bit slower on this first pair for myself, and I think I still finished knitting them in like 4 days maybe. It was pretty quick overall. So, and it's just a really, really fun project. I wanted to knit this pair first and like test out the process and the felting and really complete these before I did anything else, because I also went ahead and ordered yarn quantities to do a pair for my husband. And this was going to be a Christmas gift for him, and I didn't want to ruin them. So I did mine first and then did his second. And I'm really, really pleased with how his turned out as well. I used kind of like a sage green color, and then also a forest green color. And then I just kept that dark green on the sole as well for him. And yeah, they turned out really well. Both pairs did. I was a little bit conservative, I think, in the amount of felting that I let happen. I think both of our pairs could stand to probably go in the wash once more and shrink up a little bit more. But I wanted to live with them a little bit first and make sure that that is the case. I think for me personally, I think his might actually genuinely need a little bit more shrinking to fit his foot really well. But for me, the primary thing I'm running into is that the spot where your foot slides in is a little bit wider than I would like. And so I also just debated sewing some elastic in there to kind of keep it closed a little bit more. But I think after living with it for a while, I think I will probably put them both in the wash again, just for one more quick little cycle. Stretch them out as needed while they're wet, and then they'll be good to go. But yeah, these were just really, really fun things to work on. A nice change of pace, a nice change of process. I've never felted anything before, so it was just really fun, and I'm really glad I did it. And now we have these cute little matching slippers. The other thing that I was really trying very hard to finish before Christmas, and ultimately ended up technically meeting that goal, but not practically, was a sweater for my husband. This is something that I self-drafted for him based on a store-bought sweater that he has. So I'm calling this the Jacob sweater because that is my husband's name. But it is just a nice, simple stockinette sweater with set-in sleeves and 2x2 rib details. So yeah, just a nice simple sweater. I knit this up using Cascade Heritage in the color Charcoal. I tried so hard to finish this in time for him to open on Christmas morning, and unfortunately did not quite meet that goal. If you watched my last podcast episode, I was like pretty confident that I was going to finish it in time. But since I recorded that video, I was like decently far along, I think in both sleeves. And I was about ready to do a mid-project block, and I ended up doing that. I blocked the sweater and he tried it on, and he didn't like the fit of the sleeves. And what he described like wanting to fix actually was quite simple to fix, and I could have not ripped back at all in one of the sleeves and then like just ripped back a little bit in the other one. But there was also something that he said was fine, but like I could see it was a little weird, and so I ended up ripping back quite a ways. I didn't undo all of the short row shaping, but I undid the tail end of the short row shaping and redid the last little bit, and ended up knitting the whole sleeves all over again. And then I also still had 5 inches left in the body. And so, yeah, there was quite a bit of work to be done. And I started experiencing some hand pain. And so I want to say like 5 days before Christmas, maybe 4 or 3, I just made the decision that I needed to mentally tell myself that I was not going to finish it in time for Christmas, because I was getting a little bit stressed out. I was giving myself hand pain. And he was just very much just like, don't worry about it. Don't hurt yourself over it. So I ended up slowing down quite a bit. And then, yeah, I ended up finishing this like just before we went to bed on Christmas Eve. So it technically was done on Christmas Day. And if I pushed a little bit harder on the days before, I probably actually could have finished it, but that's okay. It got blocked on Christmas Day, and he actually was able to wear it to our extended family holiday party on the 26th. So it's still finished basically for Christmas, and it's gotten some wear already. And he really likes it. It fits really well. And he really likes the yarn choice. It's very comfortable for him on his skin, which was a really big priority for me. Hopefully he gets a lot of wear out of it. And yeah, this was my last sweater finished object for the year. But I also managed to finish one more thing a few days ago, and that is a very last pair of socks. I'm calling these my Waffle Socks. It's kind of a self-drafted little pattern inspired by Jessica from Those Twins Who Knit. It's really easy. It's essentially you do 2 rounds of knit stitches of stockinette, and then you follow that with 2 rounds of 2x2 rib, and then you do 2 rounds of stockinette and 2 rounds of 2x2 rib, and it creates this really nice little waffle texture. But yeah, just a really nice little cozy pair of socks. I knit these up using Red Door Fiber Studios Bounce Sock in the color Price of Dreams, which is this really lovely color. It's kind of almost similar to the quilt behind me, which is like a true like burgundy claret color, but it has a little bit more orange to it. It's just like slightly warmer. So it's just a really nice fall winter pair of socks. I really love this color. And I will say with this pair of socks specifically, I got close in a lot of other pairs of socks, but with this pair of socks, this is my 100% dream sock fit. Like there's nothing I would change about these, which is really exciting, especially like since that was a major goal for me this year in 2025 to have it completely finished and like check, there's no reservations I have about it. It's perfect. It's great. Feels really good. You can see my heel flap is really short. It's only 1 inch long. And then my gusset is also very short. I have 64 stitches in the ankle and 60 stitches in the foot. I figured out my toe degreases that I like because the top of my sock has more stitches than the bottom because of how I go down to 60 stitches. So that worked out really well. The length of the sock is like perfect. I think in my past pairs, I was probably about 1/4 of an inch off. And so that was really perfected in this one. It fits so well. I'm so happy with these socks. And yeah, I documented all the measurements very carefully so that I can replicate it like perfectly in all the future pairs of socks that I make. And I think I have a lot of socks coming my way in 2026 because these, the way that these fit and the way the last few ones have fit, but especially these ones. It's just like, it makes me very excited at the prospect of hand knitted socks in a way that I haven't been in previous years. So I feel really, really good about these, and am excited to have them in my sock drawer and ready to wear now. And with that, that is everything that I knit in 2025. Like I said at the beginning of the video, 2025 was a weird year. I didn't finish anything until the end of May. And then, you know, the last half of the year, I felt like I was basically a knitting factory. I was turning out projects left and right, which, you know, that kind of variation is pretty odd for me. And I'm coming out of the busier season feeling like I'm craving a little bit more calm and steadiness and stability. But regardless of how much I make or how fast I knit, I just really believe that knitting is a tool for our mental health, for my mental health at least. I find so much joy and empowerment and creativity and inspiration in the projects that I have on my needles, and watching them grow and watching how the decisions that I make shape something for better or for worse. And I just think that that's really cool and powerful. You know, like this sweater, this took 9 months for me to make. That is my longest project timeline to date. And you know what? It's more beautiful because of that. I hope that you had a nice time sitting down and chatting with me, that you have found a lot of joy in whatever you've been working on, and that you come back for the next one. I'll see you then. Bye.